Hi, this is Tom Jacobs from tdjacobs.com and also healingsuicide.com. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, channel and energy worker, do all kinds of healing work. I'm a psychic medium. Basically, I just work on whatever I can to help you progress into the next phase of your journey and with more grace and ease and compassion and self-care. This video is a continuation of the relationships why video from the other day. In that video, I talk about how your soul sees the important human relationships that you have and how to understand what you're attracting and how to deal with it and how to own parts of yourself. I encourage you, if you haven't seen that, to go check that out before you watch this whole thing, because I'm going to build on it. Essentially, a couple days after posting that, I thought, yeah, I want to extend the story. So this is about soulmates, our conceptions of soulmates, and how the soul understands these connections, these really intense, important connections that may persist over many lifetimes. First, I want to say that people do sometimes ask me about twin flames. They're very confident about this concept. They've heard a lot about it. I don't work with that image. In the model of soul that I've channeled, there isn't one person out there for you, or there isn't one original, other half or kind of thing. But as I talk about this conception of soulmates and how we can experience these intense karmic relationship connections, you'll see how it's easy to feel that there is such a thing as a twin flame, but I don't address that. It doesn't fit within the model of soul that I've channeled. So basically, the idea is that you're having a bunch of different kinds of relationships over the course of your life, and there are agreements made with other souls by your soul to have certain experiences, to pull things out of you. As I said in the other video, relationships why, I talked about how our important relationships are designed by soul to pull things out of us so that we own and embrace them, aspects of ourselves, or we own and release and get rid of or let go of aspects of ourselves. So that's really the function. Well, it does happen that over the course of many lifetimes, we bump into the same people again and again and again. That is true. People were incarnated in families with. They're not family in every lifetime, but if they're family once, they're family a bunch of times. But another relation, in other times they're friends or rivals or business partners or business rivals or mentors or employees or or vice versa. So we have all these different kinds of dynamics with various people over many lifetimes. When we meet someone and there's a really strong pull, we've been taught, many of us may assume, when we're activated in this really important way and we feel there's more going on, we maybe sense a multi-life connection, we may assume these people are our soulmates. So in the model of soul that I've channeled from the Ascended Master that I work with, whose name is Djehuty, that's his Chem or ancient Egyptian name. It's kind of erroneous to call it ancient Egyptian, but if I say Chem or Kemetic, you're not going to know what I mean. Also known as Hermes, Thoth, Merlin, Saint Germain. In this model of soul, we have a bunch of different souls we need to and will connect with. But once in a while we meet someone we have unresolved business with. That's actually more common, that we meet somebody we have unresolved business with from another life. So we might meet them and there's a flush of either affection or attraction or confusion because something stirred, or we're lit up some way, we have emotional or physical chemistry with them, and we might even be, I've at times meeting such people been scrambled, like I have to take a few days to get my footing because I'm just activated and something from another life, from the unconscious has burst up, burst into my conscious self, and I'm overtaken by all these ideas and feelings and more feelings. So we do meet people who has unresolved issue with, and so this kind of leads me to talk about sometimes we would think soulmate when in fact we have a bunch of soulmates, but we want to think it's like one person, but we may have unresolved business or unresolved karma with another person. This is very common when those intense relationships or those meetings occur and everything is now suddenly different. And karma I define as beliefs attached to emotion. This is really important to understand. Karma isn't something out of your control, yet that's what some of us may have learned about karma, that it's a punishment and reward system, that it's about justice, you know, what goes around comes around or whatever. But essentially, you're carrying beliefs about why things happen the way they do. Now, you have your own set of personal karmas in your own life. If you want more on this, you know, you can get the Evolutionary Astrology Basics 1 home study course. It's not an astrology basics class. It assumes that you know astrology basics, but it introduces my model of soul and how all this stuff works, how karma and these emotions work, and how these things are stored in the unconscious, and how and why and when they get triggered and what to do about them. And that's a setup for learning to look at charts from this karmic angle that I do. But you meet somebody and you have unresolved issues with them, beliefs about how they should treat you or you should treat them, unconscious beliefs. So the unresolved thing from another lifetime, this unresolved business, unfinished business, is a perception of what I call energetic credit and debt. I owe you something, or you owe me something, or both. The perception of debt. Because there is no karmic law about, you know, retribution or something. It's about how we affect each other and how our affecting each other affects us and what we believe, what you believe. So when you meet somebody and you have this unresolved business with that person, I'll invite you to understand that I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I'm just kind of rolling with it. I want you to understand that there's something to be resolved. So look at what you perceive that person should be for you, or what you perceive you should be for that person. Like, what is triggered? What is stirred? You know, and you're not going to be able to think clearly like that at first until you get used to this feeling and you're grounded and, you know, but you can look at it in terms of, what does part of me want to happen here? In the sense of, wait a minute, I want to do something for you. Or, wait a minute, I think you're supposed to do something for me. That expectation can come to the surface when we're stirred like that by somebody. So you can resolve it briefly. You can resolve it by changing your mind about what somebody owes you or what you owe somebody else. And then you can move on. I think Jeff Green, who's an astrology teacher, an evolutionary astrologer, said years ago, I heard this through somebody else, you don't have to marry the person. You can have a cup of coffee. For 5 minutes, you can resolve this garbage. You know, like, that's paraphrasing. The idea of, like, you don't have to be with that person forever, but you do have to resolve something. So I use this example sometimes in my teaching, and I think it's a really good one. Imagine an agrarian kind of culture, maybe tribal, agrarian, maybe nomads, right? And let's say it's, you know, there's a family. It's not abnormal for a family to have a dozen kids, right? You know, let's say that you in this family are the 12th kid, the youngest kid. So when you come in, there are a bunch of older kids. They could be a year older than you, you know, up all the way up to 12 of them. But there could also be a couple older ones. But there's going to be like a bevy of kids who have experienced a younger kid coming in. You're the last one. So by the time you come in, your parents might have less time for any one individual. So part of you, if you as a youngest child doesn't feel loved, supported, etc., right, you might get fixated on that parent who you expect should have more time for you. I'm not trying to be unfair to people or say that all across time children are being neglected or some kind of garbage like that. I'm just saying that imagine that scenario where you feel like you need more love than somebody has to give you. Now, practically speaking, there are a dozen kids and there's a bunch of work to do to maintain survival. So you're not getting that need met, or you don't feel, you know, as loved as you might. Okay. Fast forward some centuries, and let's say that you're the youngest kid in a family that has 2 kids. And let's say that that mother from another life is your mother again this life. We change roles all the time, but let's just presume it's the same. Well, you may, from the get-go, as an infant, expect more from her than she has to give, or it could be no matter what she gives you, you perceive it's not enough. because of being emotionally bent out of shape in another life where it's fixated on her, fixated on that being. So this is this one example of energetic credit or debt. Okay, another example, you and I are business partners in thousands of years ago in Mesopotamia. I don't know, random place and time. And I don't really trust you, so I end up hijacking things and essentially stealing from you. I don't really trust you, and so I kind of steal shit and embezzle, and maybe I leave town, right? Whatever. Well, you're going to be bitter toward me. So let's say in some other life, fast forward to we're born in the 20th century, and we're friends. But neither of us can really trust each other, but we feel pulled toward each other. The unresolved issue, right, is the judgment because you hurt me, you did this to me, I can't trust you. All those emotional things being bent out of shape, those are kind of the fodder, the fuel for meeting each other in another life and saying like, oh my God, I know you. Yeah, we're connected. And then after you get connected, something comes up and you're like, wait a minute, I don't think I can trust you. And then the person says, I can't trust you either. These perceptions of credit and debt in many lifetimes. So whatever the detail is, whether I stole from you or you didn't love me enough or you never came to my recital or whatever it is, whatever it is, like those examples, random and real. I don't want to share my real life all the time with you guys, but perceptions of energetic credit and debt, the solution is forgiveness. The solution is owning that you're creating your experience and that people are going to hurt you because you need to learn how to go from pain and fear into love, so other people will facilitate that process. This rests in acceptance that life isn't actually about safety and security and support. It's not about finding out that you'll never get hurt. And if you are hurt, you're doing it wrong. That's not what life is about in this model of soul that I teach. So when you meet somebody and there's unfinished business, feel into, I mean, you might have sparks, you might have warm feelings, you might have familiarity, it might be really great, but just keep in the back of your mind an open eye or an ear on what you perceive that person owes you, or what you seem to want from that person, or what you perceive you should do or should be for that person. Just keep an eye on that. And the more you get comfortable feeling things without having to like put it on other people or take it to other people, the more you can get comfortable hearing what narratives are attached to your emotions and your feelings and your needs. I do have to tell you a personal story, at least one. I'll tell you two brief stories. Years ago, I was with friends of a friend, and I met one of their friends, and all these kind of sparks flew. And I was up all night, like being like a crazy person, like remembering this other life that I experienced with this person. And we both agreed that something was happening. And over a few months, we didn't really date, but there was a kind of a strong emotional connection. And somewhere in there, one of us said to the other one, I think in another life we're married. And the other one said, I think you're right. But I said, I think that you were my wife. And I was happy, and that's really throwing me off because part of me has memories of unhappy experiences in many lifetimes, right? We remember the bad stuff. And she was like, yeah, but that's not happening now. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So it's confusing because there's a connection. We remember certain things, but that's not what's happening now. And so when you meet somebody in this kind of, thing where you think, it would be very easy for, if I bought into the soulmate idea, to say that person is my soulmate because there's such a clear, strong connection. But again, people come into our lives when we need things about us activated, and they go when we've seen it, when it's been activated. So there's one story. Another story is somebody I met not long after that. I did end up dating this person officially for, I don't know, upwards of a year or something, part of a year. And I had a sense when I met her that I remembered another life, essentially seeing her across a crowded room, or like a public space where she was married to somebody in the town that everybody knew, and he kind of like owned her. And I longed to be with her because I thought she was a wonderful person. She was beautiful. And so like then I had this experience in this life where I got to be with her for a time. Well, then it was over. You know what I mean? Then it was like time to move on. So we have these experiences where we can get that itch scratched, or we get that need met, or we get to say, and in that case, actually, I do, now I'm remembering more of the details. This guy in this other life didn't really treat her well, but used her kind of like a trophy. And I had this desire to say, you are wonderful. You deserve more than that. You're amazing. And I got to treat her like that in this life, which resolves that tension. And at the time, I probably thought we were going to be together forever because I was so in love, but things change. And that was a hard one to let go of. Both of those relationships were hard to move on from. And yet people come and go, and we have to accept that. So you don't have one soulmate. But when you meet a person, you have many kinds of soulmates, right? But when you meet a person and that kind of thing opens up and you feel like very emotional and connected and whatever, and you feel multidimensional and whatever, fireworks, sparks, whatever, it's easy to feel that, oh my God, this is so significant. It must be the most significant thing. Well, maybe not. You know, I'm recording this on February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. I had the other video, as I say in that video, I had it on my mind for a while, and it just happened to happen the other day. And I've been teaching this stuff about soulmates off and on for years, and I forget that I don't often teach the channel perspectives outside my subscription service and my astrology teaching, because I weave in that to my evolutionary astrology teaching, all this model of soul. And certainly I'm explaining this to clients all the time about how we affect each other and, you know, the perceptions of energetic credit and debt and how to change karma. But it's really important to be consciously intentional, have conscious awareness and be intentional about how we operate in our lives, including within relationships. So I would just invite you to recognize that you have connections you don't know are waiting to happen. And the reason they will spark you is because you're supposed to forgive yourself for not loving that person enough in the other life, or you're supposed to forgive the other person for not being there for you. You're supposed to forgive yourself for stealing or cheating or lying, or vice versa, forgive the other person. You know, you're supposed to decide you're not responsible for somebody else's well-being or happiness, and vice versa. You know, like other people have to decide they're not responsible for you. Like, the resolution is very important. And the quicker that you can do that, a couple things are true. Like the quicker, the more you develop the facility, but the willingness to let go of people is kind of what I'm saying. The more that you can clear your own energy field, clear your heart, learn about yourself, learn what makes you tick and what's unresolved, and also really at times confront the deepest other life pains and griefs and doubts and guilt and shame. I haven't even talked about guilt, but I do want to mention that as far as this idea of perception and debt. I talked about the kid, right, the young kid, the youngest of 12, you know, and then hundreds, thousands of years later, whatever, being born and expecting a lot of one parent or something like that. Well, consider the parents' side of that. That parent in the life where there are a dozen kids might reasonably say, look, these are the circumstances, and I love all my kids, and, you know, these goats got to get milked or whatever. You know, that person might have peace about it. So in the relationships, not everybody agrees that one person owes the other person something. But if you're stuck on somebody should treat you a certain way, somebody should make you feel safe, somebody should validate you or love you or come to your recitals or whatever, if you're stuck on that, that's about you, but it may seem like it's about that other person. So the more facility and willingness you develop to be open to these things, you can process the unresolved, stuck things in your unconscious, in your energy field, that hold you back from progressing along your spiritual path, that hold you back from your evolution. Whenever you clear things, you open things up. And so you do this on your own, right? You can do this always on your own. You can say, oh yes, I have a crummy belief about this or that, and work on it. But relationships, as I talked about in the other video, are extremely important. And I'll tell you that they are in this model of soul, relationships are the single most important driver of human evolution, because people bounce into us or off of us and say, oh yeah, look, you're creative, or yeah, you're smart, or wow, you're really hard on yourself, aren't you? Or hey, you should drink some green juices, or take some vitamins. Like, you know, we bounce off each other with these reflections about where we are in the process of becoming powerful through self-love and self-care. So these people come in and out, and our job is to learn how not to be totally attached to them making us feel safe. That's kind of what I'm getting at with this whole thing about the perception of maybe you should love me better. Maybe I feel like I'm waiting for you to treat me a certain way and you won't do it. There's part of that energetic, that perception of energetic debt. I talked about credit and debt. It's not always a sense of lack. Like I mentioned, I wanted to tell this person a loving thing. I wanted to treat her well, and I did have that opportunity. So sometimes it's also not just like this resentful thing or waiting for someone to love you, but wanting to love them even. You know, someone who's unavailable, somebody who, I was even talking with a client about this earlier today, about like varieties of connection issues when it comes to sexuality. And I was just listing these lists, and I said something like, you know, imagine two best friends and one of them falls for the other and the second one says, whoa, I'm not into that, right? And it could be a gender, or it could be a sexual orientation thing, or it could just be chemistry thing, even for people who try to date but don't, and then one gets really fixated on the other. All these different things about how we can misconnect. Well, some of those things, when they're really intense in some lifetimes, they are, you know, they're fodder for this learning about relationships. So I encourage you to unwind from the perception that you have a soulmate. And the way that Djehuty actually talks about it, but you have many souls who want to help you learn along your path, so you have many soulmates. And it's not like, oh, Tom, there's not one. Well, there must be just two, right? No, because I've had two major relationships, whatever, you know, or 5 or 7. There's no set number, because you need a variety of contacts and different kinds of relationships to activate you and to send you into your evolution. So I just encourage you not to get stuck in those specificities of spiritual teachings that may tell you something, you know, very specific and narrow. We want to believe that love is waiting for us. Oh, speaking of that, actually, if you're interested in this, and it is Valentine's Day tomorrow, you can go to SoundCloud, soundcloud.com, and look up Tom Jacobs' Be My Valentine. 5 years ago, when I was doing a radio show on Contact Talk Network, was a weekly spiritual astrology channeling radio show. I did a show deconstructing romance and talking about synastry and astrology and how we affect each other. And I cover some of this stuff in a playful way. But anyway, that's you can check that out. That's maybe almost an hour long or something. It's called Be My Valentine on SoundCloud.com. So anyway, check out what I'm up to at tdjacobs.com and also healingsuicide.com. And thanks for your time and energy. I hope this is helpful, and take care of yourself.